get your Santa hats ready. Get them ready. Because we're going to be talking about some Santa hat level stuff, apparently, in this video. I don't know, I'm going to title it. I don't know what it's going to be. But let me tell you how I got here. So, I got on my Discord, and I was like, you know what? Let me start answering some of these questions. Because I have a lot of Q&A questions that I need to answer and that I want to answer. But I lost the file that I had on my computer. So I was like, you know what? Let me go back in there, look in the thread. Let me start from the beginning. And what do I see first? What do I see first? Hiba does it to me. And then I see it again by Uzumaki Yusuke, which I believe is my boy Andrew. And I'm like, so, because I've seen this in the comments section, I've seen this in multiple videos, I need to make it at this point. I need to make it. So we are here today. Like I said, get your Santa hats ready to talk about my favorite fights in anime and manga. Now, like I said, I'm going to include manga because there's a lot of manga fights that are in my favorites list that have not been animated yet. And so I need to do both. I need to do both, man. So I'm going to try to keep this as spoiler-free as possible. Which I don't know how I'm going to do it. But I'm going to try. And we'll see how it goes. Now, there are two fights automatically in my mind that I feel like are going to be impossible for me to talk about without spoilers. So when we get to those, I'll talk to them. I might save those. I mean, they're two of my favorite fights of all time anyway, so I'd probably keep them for later. But this isn't going to be in any order. I don't even know where to start, but there's so much greatness. Where does one even start? Do I start with the obvious? Do I start with the greatness? I mean, I might as well, right? I might as well start with Mugiwara no Luffy versus Robert D. I can't. I'm gonna have to save it. I'm gonna have to save it because if I start talking about this, if I start talking about the big three now, I'm not. I'll save that for the end. I'll save Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece for the end. Because I feel like if I start talking about them right now, this is going to turn into a very, very long video. And I'm sure a lot of you are like, you don't want it. We'll talk about the big three at the end. So, let's see. Ippo. Hajime no Ippo. Hajime no Ippo, son. Alright. So, my favorite fight in Hajime no Ippo is Volg versus Mike Elliott. But there are so many incredible fights too. Like Takamura versus Brian Hockman. Takamura versus Brian Hockman. Takamura versus Bison. Ippo versus Gonzalez. Ippo versus Sendo round 2. Sawamura versus Mashiba. But in the midst of all that greatness, I think Volg versus Mike Elliott still remains my favorite. And if you've read the fight, I'm pretty sure you'd understand why. Not only did it make Volg my favorite character in Hajime no Ippo, but it truly is one of just the greatest fights I've ever seen. And I feel like if you structure it, there are other fights that are quote-unquote, that one could consider to be better, more epic, more intense, more emotional. But there was just something about this fight, beginning the 1000s, that just hit different. I love Volg versus Mike Elliott. The wrestling stuff with bringing in the cheating, and I loved it. I loved every second of it. It was intense and emotional in its own way, and honestly, by the end of it, I was tearing up because it was just, wow. Like, what a fight. So, Volg versus Mike Elliott is, without question, my favorite fight in Hajime no Ippo, but there's a lot of contenders. That's got to be in my favorites list. Going back to my childhood. Come on. Yo, if you go to my YouTube history, and I guarantee you from, like, the moment YouTube first started until now, I think my most searched thing ever is Gohan versus Cell. Just earlier this year, multiple times, I went on the search bar and just put Gohan versus Cell and just watched a random part of the fight because it's just that impeccable. It is that immaculate. It is a masterpiece. People, yo, now he's ready to face him. One arm broken. Man, Gohan was like, Kame. And then the music's intensity. This man Cell said, now that's more like it. And then they both start charging it up. The music gets more intense. Krillin and Piccolo are shook. You start looking everywhere around the rest of the world. Right? The individuals are feeling this. The teapots are moving. You know how it is in Dragon Ball. The teapots are moving. And then Gohan and... it's over. The Super Saiyan 2 transformation. The end of the fight. Vegeta, now's your chance. Boom. I mean, the final Kamehameha. The beam struggles. Gohan pointing to Cell Juniors. It's Gohan versus Cell, bro. I don't need to say anything. It is Gohan versus Cell. I love Goku versus Frieza. I love Goku versus Vegeta, both fights. Both in the Saiyan Saga and in the Buu Saga. Greatness, man, right? Like, a lot of awesome sauce in Dragon Ball. And then you go back to the original Dragon Ball, get some greatness, some greatness, right? But Gohan versus Cell is still to this day my favorite fight in Dragon. It has to be. It has to be. Just both from nostalgia, and I can go back and watch that fight right now and still get goosebumps. It's just that good. On that same note, YuYu Hakusho, Toguro. Toguro. The Dark Tournament has like this. The entire thing is sensational. You have some of the greatest fights you could ever ask for. I mean, I always talk about Yusuke versus Chu when I talk about people throwing hands. I just love that fight. I love the idea behind that fight. And as things progress, the Hiei greatness, Kurama greatness, and you see all of this. But to top it all off, with everything building towards it, the Genkai training, what takes place and happens with Genkai, Kurabo... to Yusuke versus Toguro. The fight itself is incredible. But it was more so the build-up and then the fight. Like, it's the combination of the two that just make it so special, man. I mean, from the moment you first see the dude, you're like, holy flagners, and then it just... The Dark Tournament. It's Yusuke versus Toguro. Do I need to say more? It's Yusuke versus Toguro. Fist of the North Star. One of the most epic, raw, incredible sequences I have ever seen in all of anime is when this man Kenshiro is sitting on his horse. No, I think it was in his room. It's been a while, but I think it was in his room, and he heard his horse galloping towards him, and on the horse is a note from this man Rao, and Kenshiro's like, he's calling me. Bro, are you kidding me? Yo, this man Kenshiro gets on the horse and he starts galloping and he sees Rao in the distance. Bro, like, when I tell y'all how epic this stuff is, man, it is nasty. It is truly out of this world. I mean, full-blown ornament hockey, like, conquers. Bro, it is the fullest extent of grown men throwing hands. Kenshiro versus Rao. Not only the build-up throughout everything that's taking place up until this point, the Keno, Rao, the battles up until that point, it was so good. So good. But when you get to this point, and you see the two of them throwing down, and then the way that fight ends too, bro. It is one of the most iconic endings to any battle. I mean, come on. Kenshiro versus Rao. It has to be somewhere on this list. Monogatari. Specifically, Kizu Monogatari 3. You want to talk about battles that blow your mind from an emotional standpoint and from an animation standpoint. Kiss shot Acerola Heart under Blade versus Araragi Koyomi at the end of Kizu 3 is, just watch it for yourself. Watch it for yourself. there are certain things that they did the best that they could, and it was incredible, bro. My man, it was the source material, so it's just I watched it first, right? So they got it from the source material. Nisio Isin, of course, man's a goat, right? Man's a legend. But they took what was stated in the prose and brought it to life in such a way. I don't know how they did it. I still, when I think back to that, I can't wait to rewatch that movie because it has had such a long-lasting impact on me. That third Kizumonogatari movie is magnificent. But it's that final fight, especially with those two characters, knowing how important they're, and I feel like it just gets better over time. I don't know when that movie came out, because I just recently caught up to Monogatari, so I don't know. But my goodness, bro. Yes, that's definitely gonna be on the list. Aranagi versus Kiss Shot in Kizu 3 for very special reasons. It was a magnificent fight. Honor. Yo, come on, man. Dude, episodes 125 and episodes 126 of the Hunter x Hunter 2011 anime are among the greatest stuff that anime has to offer, bro. Netero versus Meruem. And if you want to include episode 122, you can. By all means. You see Netero right here, you see Netero on the other side, the narrator starts going in. It's exciting. It's exciting stuff, right? It's exciting stuff. But nothing compares to this is a tomb. Your tomb. And it's just the way they start throwing down. The fact that it is the king finally in action. Because we had seen how insanely powerful Meruem was up until this point. We were seeing how his character, more importantly, was developing throughout the course of this arc. And especially when it comes to after episode 112 and the way that he passed by Zeno and Netero. And he goes past both of them. Oh, I don't want to spoil too much. But so at episode 12, something crazy happens. And then after that, when you get, or episode 112, and after that, stuff happens. Netero goes in, Dragon Dive. But you finally get the two of them throwing down, and it's just the way that it's shown visually, what you see in their minds. This is directly after getting Netero's flashback. You see how Meruem's doing this, and he's applying what he learned in Go and in Shogi and in Gungi, all of that into the battlefield, and it's immaculate. It is incredible, and then the ending of the battle is so iconic, with some of the most incredible lines ever stated by a manga character, by my boy Netero. Don't underestimate humanity's infinite potential for evolution, Meruem. Legendary. Gon versus P2 honorable mention, of course, and then Chrollo, not only versus Hisoka, but also versus Zeno and Silva back in York. Great stuff there. Honorable mentions of those. It's like I don't want to get into this super spoiler territory yet. Let me see here. Toriko. Whoa, yo. Toriko versus Starjin, without question, has to be somewhere on my list of all-time favorite fights. That fight, the cooking festival, has some of the most hyped stuff you will ever see. Tommy Rod versus Sunny is legendary. You feel me? This man knocking Master G. But look, Toriko versus Starjin, in the midst of all of that, this man, Mitsutoshi, somehow drew this fight to the point to where there was so much blood coming out of these two dudes that you couldn't even see the panels anymore. It was that insane. And they just kept throwing down and seeing techniques from before, seeing techniques now, and because the buildup of Starjin as character, all the way from the GT Robo arc up until then. And now you get to see Starjin in his fullest flex. Him and Toriko throwing down. It is just, my God. If you want a boost in your... Yo, if you're trying to inject yourself with some hype, go read some Toriko versus Sergeant Kasada. There are, bro, when you see some of those panels, cooking them up for a meal, yo, this man Sergeant. There's just one panel of Sergeant holding his flame knife. That thing was my iPod Touch like lock screen for months. That thing is iconic. Hey, come on, man. Toriko versus Sergeant. It's just, and shout out to a couple other battles in that series too. Toriko versus Tamarad earlier on, magnificent. The Kugiren greatness, and then of course the final battles within the final arc were all insane as well. You know, the third Oni, you feel me? Crazy stuff. Toriko greatness. On that same line of thought, Hitman Reborn. Now with Hitman Reborn, the one that pops out immediately in my mind is Ryohei versus Flagnard's Koyo. It starts with a K. It's in the Inheritance Ceremony arc, the one that takes place after the future. That fight, man. There's just something about that fight. I love Suna versus Enma, Suna versus Zongzis, the Genkishi Knight fight. I mean, there's some greatness in Reborn when it comes to fights. The final fight of her flexing, you know, Hibari versus Zongzis in the final, just a lot of flexing. But that fight, the Ryohei fight, is just, there was just something about seeing Ryohei giving it everything that he has, especially after knowing what he's all about, and finally getting to see him use the boxing. I mean, it looked like a Hajime No Ippo fight out there, man. I mean, he was throwing down, and I love that fight. I absolutely love that fight. It still sticks out to me to this day, and I haven't reread it in years. So it just goes to show how, like, out of all the fights, like a side character battle, because Ryohei, I mean, he's not my favorite character per se, but he is a pretty memorable character. And to know that his fight is my favorite Reborn is fascinating. It's interesting. No, are you kidding, bro? Okay. So there's two main ones in Kingdom that I'm thinking about off the top of my head. You want to talk about Santa Hat level stuff, man? Mobu versus Kanmei. The strongest man in all of China. All of China. Mobu versus Kanmei. That is like, I don't remember how many chapters that was, but that was, yo. Dog. Yo, Mobu versus Kanmei is different. It is different, man. It truly is. I mean, just magnificent. It is hype to like the further. It is just, it's insane. It is absolutely insane. And just what is riding on that battle for both sides of the war. How intense it was. Just, come on, Mobu versus Kanmei. And then the other one, because the build up to it, the entire battle, just Kyokai and Shin versus Hoken, the final fight. I mean, when I look back to chapter 350, which is their first fight, and then you think about how far both of them had to have come to face off with them again, because you remember when the first time that Kyokai faced off against him, in a tone tanning all over the place, and then, man, I need to read some Kingdom again, dude. And then you have Shin and Hoken and like a movie. I mean, that chapter felt like a movie. It really did. Like, just the way the panels were structured, it was out of this world good. But then you get back to it in the most recent arc, or in the most recent big arc, and man, just the way that it went down, some of the panels, dude. Shin greatness, Shin of the Shin unit greatness. You get to see him in his the best possible form of Shin in that arc, man. I mean, he is a true leader on that battlefield, leading everyone towards everything. And then directly after something major happens to his squad, now he is focused on taking out this man Hoken. And it's just, man, when Kyokai starts throwing down, you see everything that she does. Oh, man, dude. That fight is just brilliant. Brilliant. So, but if I had to pick one of the two, I mean, it's I can't. I feel like I would have to go Mobu versus Kanmei because I've been with that one longer. But they're both excellent. They're both excellent. Berserk. Guts versus Rosine. Very, very emotional fight. Guts versus Grunbelt. You already know, son. You already know. And then the Hill of Swords, you know, with Guts and Zod. I mean, I feel like I'm leaning more towards the Rosine fight. It's like, it's tough because I've reread the Grunbelt fight so many times. So many times. And for obvious reasons, right? The greatness, the armor. But the Rosine fight is really, it just hits home on a different level. It is such an emotional fight, dude. Probably one of those two, honestly, because I love the Hill of Swords. The Guts and Zod. I mean, some of those panels just insane. And of course, the original like Guts and Griffith fight. It's extremely iconic to the story in the Golden Age. But I think I'm gonna have to go with the Rosine fight. I think I'm gonna have to go with the Rosine fight. Just like I said, it's just at that point in time in the story to have that battle and some of those panels. I'm gonna go with Guts vs. Rosine. I'm going with Guts. I love the other two a lot. And my most reread one is without question the Grunbelt fight. And shout out to Genkisha. But at the same time, I feel like I have to go with the Rosine fight because that one has a lot of what I love in Berserk inside of it. So I'll go for now. I'll go with that one. I might switch it later on because this isn't an official list. But Guts vs. Rosine, definitely. JoJo. Now JoJo fights are interesting because there are certain fights I love from an emotional standpoint. Like for example, like Caesar versus Wamu and like Gyro and Funny. Like I really love those battles from an emotional standpoint. But then there's also really just intense and insane fights too. So I honestly don't know which one to go. You know what? I might as well go with the one that combines those the best. Brings like the emotional aspect while also bringing the intense like strategic part of JoJo as well that I love about its fights. Okay, I got two. I got two in mind. I got two in mind for JoJo. I mean, one of them has always been my choice, but so two, right? The final fight in part 6, the final fight in Stone Ocean, is just absolutely insane. And, you know, the Bohemian Rhapsody stuff was crazy, but that final battle in part 6 legitimately felt like a final boss battle. Like it was crazy, and it gets crazy. Of course, with the anime coming out, I don't want to spoil anything, but that final part 6 fight is insane. And then my other one is the final battle of part 7. Yo, all I'm gonna say, because it is one of my most hyped moments, it without question top 3 most hyped I've ever been while reading anything, period. My time is only mine. That's all I'm gonna say. That is all I am going to say. Johnny Joe Kid Joestar. Yo. And the legend. Yo, see, it's because I don't want to spoil JoJo for anyone, man. So the final fight of part 6, final fight of part 7, Edge goes to final fight of part 7 just because of the, like I said, I love that section. Insane. But final fight of part 6 is also up there too. And there's a lot of other really, really good ones in JoJo that are good for just that intense, like, man, he's outsmarting him this way, he's outsmarting him this way, like how in the like the intensity, like for example in part 5 with like the Mista and Bruno and all that craziness going down in that one. So there's a lot of really good ones, but I think those two stand out in my mind the most. Let's see. I'm trying to save Gintama for like that final 4 part, because that one obviously has arguably my favorite fight in all of this. But let me see. Oh, So, in Fate Zero, there is 2 fights that I remember really, really liking. I don't remember Unlimited Blade Works that well, but Zero, because I watched it for the first time like 4 or 5 years ago. Kiritsugu versus Kirie at the end of Fate Zero. And I want to say it was Saber versus Lancer. It was earlier on in the thing. Yeah, that jump was so epic, dog. I mean, epic. Epic is all flagnards. But Kiritsugu versus Kirie just had like this. Not only was it intense for where it was, of course, in the story and the stakes and all that stuff, but there was just something about that fight that, I mean, the hand, the way that like one would dodge the other, it was crazy. So I'd rather go with that one. I'm not sure it will make my top 10, but definitely an honorable mention to that. Gurren Lagann. The anti-spiral fight. Dude, you want to talk about over-the-top, insane, just overly epic battles? That anti-spiral fight, especially with everything that was leading up towards it. Oh, man, it is beautiful, bro. If you have not watched Gurren Lagann, and you're looking for something to like inspire you, hype you up, go watch some Gurren Lagann, man. That fight in particular, it's just, like I said, with the things that happen directly before that, it makes it hit different, man. Great fight. That anti-spiral fight is amazing. And so I think all that's left is the big 3, Gintama, and then the 2 that I'm going to dive into spoilers. So let's go Gintama, and then we'll go spoilers, and then the big 3, right? Or should I go big 3 for? I'm gonna say the big 3 for the end because I already y'all know how I am. So Gintama, Gintama. Listen, for so many years, this fight right here, man, I've talked about it to endless amounts. It is truly magnificent. I don't know how Sorachi did it on a weekly basis, but Gintoki versus Takatsuki, and now, if you have not watched the Final Gintama movie, skip ahead like 15 seconds, starting from now. Gintoki versus Takatsuki Suro, or Utsuro Sugi. That final fight is amazing. It is glorious, especially in the movie. The movie. But because that one's more recent, I'm gonna let that one linger for a while. But y'all know in my heart, it's definitely like 1A to this one. But Gintoki vs. Takatsuki has held the spot down for so many years. Those chapters, chapter 514 to 520, the episodes 304 and 305, it is among the very best stuff that I have ever experienced, and it goes way beyond that of like just anime and manga. I'm talking just in general of stuff that I have experienced story-wise. This is the stuff that I love, is Gintoki versus Takatsuki, and the way that it was done, how it was built up, and then while you're reading it, while you're initially experiencing it, because the thing is that this fight gets better with every time you go back and go through it, because of how the series recontextualizes itself with every major arc, especially with the final arc. But Gintoki versus Takatsuki did something I had never seen any other story do up until I saw it done in here. Because I had seen a lot of rivalry fights, and I've seen a lot of battles take place between two rivals. But what I've never seen is a story build up their entire core story / flashback centered around 2 characters, and we only get nuggets of information throughout the entire series. And so when the 2 of them start throwing down, you're like, is this the time? Is this when we're going to start getting it? And what does Sorachi do? He gives us that information, but from Takatsugi's perspective. And then at first you're like, why is he doing that? Why are we getting this story from Takatsugi's perspective? Isn't Gintoki our main character? But that's exactly why he's saying it. And then you get the big reveal of why we're getting it from Takatsugi's perspective. And what was the last thing that he saw with the eye that's now currently gone? And the thing that's revealed there changed the entire game. And then they proceed to have their two greatest character moments back to back within that same chapter. And so they both peak at the very end, and then they peak again in the final fight. But for that moment and at that time, with everything happening within that arc, the build-up, the way it just changes everything, the emotions, the intensity, while they're throwing down, you still don't know why they're fighting each other. You're still left with questions like, why are all these two fighting each other? Like, you've gotten these nuggets of information. Takatsugi's like, hey, you should hate the world more than anyone, and you know they're rivals because of like the trollish arcs and their Joy Patriot Union arc, and like you understand, you know they're rivals. But it's like it starts off as a rivalry, but when you see why it is that they're throwing down, I mean, it's masterclass, man. It truly is on a different level. Gintoki versus Takatsugi, without question, if it's not number one, it is without question at the very least top 3 of my favorite fights ever. It is absolutely incredible, man. And like I said, it's just one of those fights that just the emotional value, the way that both I'm done because if not, I'll be here for days. So I want to talk about 2 fights in particular that I feel like I cannot talk about how great they are or what makes them special without diving into spoilers. So if you have never read or watched, if you have never read or watched Ashita No Joe, and if you have never watched the movie End of Evangelion, do not watch the sections on the Timecode. I'm gonna talk about Joe first, then Ava, and then we'll go into the big 3. So if you have never watched both of those, whatever, just skip to the big 3 section. But let me talk about Ashita No Joe first, and then we're gonna talk about Ava, because they both do something very just. It's so insane, man. So let me talk about Joe first. Ashita No Joe, I can pick almost any of the major fights in here, and if somebody were to tell me that's the greatest fight ever, I'd be like, you're spitting facts. That is how good the battles in Ashita No Joe are, because of the characters. Because you see the characters struggle leading up to that. Because you see how the characters are growing in the midst of this battle. Because you see the things that take place around the world and how these fights affect the characters and in turn affect the things around them and the characters around them. You could say Joe versus Rikishi either round or either fight, Joe versus Carlos, and I'd be like, yo, amazing. But Joe versus Jose Mendoza, the final fight of Ashita No Joe, when you get Joe's entire character journey up until the end of this series, and you get that masterpiece of a fight between the two in the ring, White Ash, Joe's giving everything he has, Jose's giving everything he has, constant counters, constant blows. And as all of the character arcs are culminating, all of the character arcs are culminating at the end of that battle. Every single side, I'm talking about all of them. As Joe is having his final moments here. And then as the final parts of the fight conclude, Jose is legitimately afraid of Joe. He sees this is a man who's not afraid to die. And throughout the entire part of the story, seeing Joe grow as a person. You know, I always say my favorite stretch in Ashita No Joe, besides the final part, is whenever he just stops boxing entirely and goes on his own little redemption / journey by himself. And because of that, this part hits different. And you get the end of Joe, the legit end of Joe's final round as a boxer. And it ends. This series ends as Joe ends. And the reason why I want to talk about it with Evangelion is because I strongly believe that Hideaki Anno was inspired by Ashita No Joe in terms of the way that he ended his original series. Because Ashita No Joe did not end when the story ended. Ashita No Joe ended when Joe's character journey came to a close. When it reached its summit, when he realized the thing that he had been searching for the entire series, that's when the series ended and Joe ended. And so with that same line of thought, let's talk about Evangelion. The end of Evangelion. Once again, if you have not watched Evangelion, especially in the movie. If you have not watched the movie, do not watch what I'm about to say. So, Joe, I guess I can't talk about it now because, just in case somebody who's watched Eva has never watched Ashita No Joe. Regardless. So in Evangelion, at the end of Eva, there is this one particular sequence. It's still in the episode 25 version, episode 25 mark version. Asuka is fighting. There is an entire army in front of her. She's on her Whitebeard stuff, going solo against these individuals. Misato is telling her to hold her ground. Shinji's on the way. Everything that you could possibly think can go wrong is going wrong. But in the midst of all of this, Asuka is having her episode 22 moment, the continuation of episode 22, within her Eva. And she's losing her mind. You get the, I don't want to die, 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 I don't want to die. And in the midst of this, she finally hears her mother. Finally hears her. And what happens after this? Asuka gets into such a euphoric state that she believes she could take on the entire world. I mean, she finally got the answer to everything she's been going for. Her mom has been with her the entire time. She thinks she's answered the question to what the AT field is. Oh my goodness. And now she went from having a crisis to extreme euphoria, from the pits of despair to the most euphoric state. She can take on the world. And so she does. She takes on all of the armies going in. It's getting so insane that SEAL's like, we gotta put a stop to this. And they send out the Eva series. Asuka Soryu Langley proceeds to fight the Eva series in what is, without question, one of the most incredibly animated, phenomenally voice acted, and most tragic sequences I have ever seen. And the thing is that when a sequence like this normally happens, it takes place at the end of a story. It takes place at the end of an arc. This is taking place dead center at the end of Evangelion. We're still in part 25. We haven't even reached 26 yet. We're still in episode 25. End of Eva. Episode 25. And so, you get every single part happening around them. Asuka's fighting the Eva series. Like I said, she's euphoric. Like, oh man, the Eva series are here? In the moment one of them even touched the ground, already took off its head. I mean, she's going, and she is throwing hands. When you want to talk about throwing hands, she was throwing hands. Robotic hands. Mecha hands. Alright? Like, this is no joke. She was throwing mecha robotic hands. Ripping them things apart. Crazy. And in the midst of this, the more she goes on the Eva series, we get flashes to what's happening in real time elsewhere. We see the Misato and Shinji stuff. Masterclass. The Misato and Shinji stuff is going down. Obviously, you know what happens if you watch the movie. Goodness, man. And then while that's happening, Asuka's starting to get overpowered, but she's still going in. The Eva series has stand no chance against Asuka, the most skilled Eva pilot by far, going in. So the Misato and Shinji stuff going down. She gives him the final words. And then we switch over to the Ritsuko, Gendo, and Rei sequence in front of Lilith. And then in the same way, in a parallel of what happened with Misato, you now see it with Ritsuko. And you're like, what in the Flagnards is going on? Because this is not just, this is literally humanity's battle here. Like, it's like if an Asuka fight in the Eva series is also representing the battles happening elsewhere, because there's so much. So, that happens. Both Ritsuko and Misato is genius. It honestly is genius. And so, you get the Lilith stuff, and then Unit 1 starts calling out to Shinji. Shinji still doesn't want to get an Eva. We know why. Well-written, amazing character that he is. And Asuka continues to fight. And she beats them all. While all of this is happening to one of the most glorious soundtracks you could ever hear. All of this, the entire world is falling into chaos around them. Character-wise, I'm talking character. Because you know Evangelion is two things, right? It's the awesome mecha sequences with the comedic and pen and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's the characters. So while Asuka's fighting for her life, survival of the fittest, the human race versus the Eva series, you're having the lives of our beloved characters. And so, while she's in a state of euphoria, she defeats them all. And then they start regenerating. And the timer is clicking on Asuka. And she finally takes up the last one. And then a spear comes in. She throws out the AT field that she believed from the very beginning would protect her because her mom is in this Eva. And it's the Lance of Longinus. And it goes. And that shot is so tragic. And then the scream. But then it doesn't even stop there. Because the Eva series get up again and proceed to all impale Asuka. And then it does not stop there. I'm done. Because this man Shinji finally gets in Unit 1 again. And he shows up. Everyone is shook. But when he sees the aftermath of what took place, it is the most tragic end to a character that I have ever seen. And the thing is that I understand that at the end of the movie, she's technically there because of instrumentality, right? And that's the reason why they're both still there at the end. But it still doesn't take away from the fact that at that point in time, what happened to Asuka was happening, and that was a shoot. That happened. Like, that legitimately happened. All right, and it was just, like I said, it's everything. It's the fact that the whole world is falling to chaos, and while that's going down, this one lone Eva pilot is fighting the entire Eva series by herself, holding it down, and wins. But then, the one thing that got her to this euphoria in the first place ended up failing because of the Lance coming in. You know what? I'm done talking about this. It's getting emotional talking about it. So, Asuka versus the Eva series, for everything I just said, is, I mean, It's without question one of my favorite fights in all of anime. Like, it's not even close. It is just... I don't know. I don't know. I don't know, man. It's when a character arc culminates at one particular time, and while theirs is going in, you have the physical representation of that happening, and then you have the character representation happening everywhere. It's just the perfect culmination of what makes Evangelion so special. I'm done. So, Asuka versus the Eva series, masterclass. So now let's talk about the big three. Now, which one do I start with? I'm gonna start off with Bleach because Naruto has so many, and One Piece, my favorites are my favorites for different reasons because there's just so many different fights I love for different reasons. So in Bleach, it's tough, right? Because Ichigo versus Ulquiorra is so amazing, and it is poetic, and just the role reversals, the whole battle. I mean, it's such an equal fight at the beginning, and then as Ulquiorra he has to leave Hueco Mundo to transform. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. Ichigo vs Ulquiorra, masterclass. Ichigo vs Grimjaw Round 3, amazing. Ichigo vs Byakuya was my favorite fight in Bleach for so many years, also amazing. And it's the culmination of everything up until that point, right? So, and then the hollow lead-in into the Arrancar saga, amazing stuff. So, and then there's fights in the Thousand Year Blood War as well, man. But if I have to just pick one from Bleach, because I gotta have, there's no way, because it's just, Bleach has so many amazing fights, dude. Like, it really does. It truly does. For right now, it's gotta be one of those three. So, or Aizen versus everyone was also just magnificent. Rukia versus Aroniero. You know what? I'm just gonna say Ichigo versus Ulquiorra and just we'll call it there, and then because the thing is I love Ichigo versus Byakuya is so nostalgic for me. I've rewatched those episodes so many times. But for right now, Ichigo versus Ulquiorra to represent Bleach. Naruto's like Hajime no Ippo and Ashita No Joe, where it has at least bare minimum 5 6-star classics. Naruto has under its belt Masashi Kishimoto, when it comes to drawing battles, when it comes to showing the physical manifestation and the visual representation of ideologies clashing, is just on a different level. Naruto versus Sasuke, both fights. Rock Lee versus Gaara. You have Sasuke versus Itachi. Jiraiya versus Pain. Naruto versus Pain. Rock Lee versus Guy. You have Kakashi versus Obito. Sasuke versus Deidara. I mean, dude. Like, so for me, Naruto versus Sasuke round 1 is legit like about as close to my childhood as like Gohan versus Cell is, right? Like that's Naruto versus Sasuke round 1. That's the Linkin Park AMVs. In the end, it doesn't even matter. I mean, come on, man. It's Linkin Park. It's Naruto. It's legendary. Rock Lee versus Gaara. It's the weights moment. It's the now or never to protect and maintain one's own ninja. Come on. But then there's Naruto versus Pain. And everything building up into that fight, Pain's speech, Naruto turning into the... I mean, come on, dude. Come on. So you got some greatness in there, right? Sasuke versus Itachi, obviously. And then it's the revelation that happens after Sasuke versus Itachi that trumps it all. It's crazy. But if I have to go with one from Naruto, I'm gonna have to go with 3. Just like I did with Bleach, I'm gonna have to go with a top 3. Because it's hard, man. When it comes to Naruto, it's hard. So I'm gonna have to go. Naruto versus Pain has to be in there. Naruto versus Sasuke, I'm gonna have to go part 2 is just so good too, man. Can I have them both in there? So Naruto versus Sasuke, I don't care which version, it doesn't matter. They're both amazing. I mean, I guess part 1 because of nostalgia, but part 2 is also amazing. But part 1 just has that super special... Because the thing with the part 1 fight is that Naruto and Sasuke are throwing down. It's the end of the Sasuke retrieval arc. It's the end of part 1. Everything's building up to this point. You've seen everything that's taken place up until now. So, it's like they're throwing down, but with every blow, you're just like, man, how does this continue to get better? It's like the fight continues to get better. You finally get the Uchiha flashback, find out why Sasuke is the way that he is, and you get Naruto turning into the One Tails, the final clash. You have those amazing sequences, especially in the anime with episodes 133 and 134. I'm about to go with the first one. And then I guess Rock Lee versus Gaara, because bro, it's Rock Lee versus Gaara, son. But the thing is that Sasuke versus Itachi is legit it is goated. When this man Sasuke rolls up on Itachi, he's sitting on the throne, and then it's a Genjutsu fight between the two. Oh my god. It's goated. It's goated. So I have to leave that at that. And see, that's the thing, right? Because just like with Bleach, because with Bleach I could obviously go in, and like the thing is, like Ichigo versus Grimmjow, that third round is goated. It really, really is. And then just Ichigo versus Aura, and it's tough. So for those, pick one, I don't care. And then here comes One Piece, bro. Now here's the thing. When it comes to One Piece, Luffy versus Robert D. Lucci is my ideal end of arc fight. That fight, I'm talking in anything. When I'm writing, and I'm writing a climactic battle, I think, or a climactic fight, a one-on-one, I think back to Luffy versus Rob Lucci. Because Luffy versus Robert D. Lucci had the entirety of that arc on its back. That arc was phenomenal. Every one-on-one fight in that arc was amazing. Everything building up to it was amazing. Robin's... y'all know, you've watched the arc. Thing is that when Luffy and Lucci are throwing down, and you see everything the two of them have to go through, you see that Luffy is literally giving it everything that he has. He doesn't even want to go into Gear Second yet because he knows what it is, right? It takes until Frankie starts coming in and interfering that Luffy's like, oh, no, I'm putting a stop to this. Jet Pistol, baby. And it's G2. And then here comes Hybrid Form. And then they really start throwing down the Rokugans. It is such a just... And then the Jet Gatling and everything building up to it. And then the... It's just like this. It's Luffy versus Lucci. But what do you want me to say? It's Luffy versus Rob Lucci. And then... when you want to talk about fights between two rivals, two individuals who respect each other so much, Luffy versus Katakuri is nasty. It is nasty, bro. It's legit nasty. Bonds, rivals, the respect. Black Kumamba. I mean, come on. And then Luffy versus Doflamingo. And what could that potentially mean for the entire story? But at that point in time, finally, I mean, that was a time period where that was that dude. Doflamingo? Don Quixote Doflamingo? And after everything that had happened, Bellamy and Law and the Law flashback and Luffy putting his foot top of Law's head. They're like, yo, you ain't touching him. Then the Conqueror's Hockey clash and it's just in the G4. And then there's Roof Piece, son. And I can't include Roof Piece yet because it's not a complete, of course, but it's just just in terms of hype, that would take the cake by far. But you know, it's legendary in its own right. But then there's Luffy versus Usopp and Luffy versus Sanji, because Luffy versus Usopp and Luffy versus Sanji are such emotional fights. Luffy versus Usopp in particular, that chapter 333, episode 236. I don't care if you want to talk about the battle of words or the actual battle they fought, because both of them are equally amazing. The tension. What in the world is going on? The emotional, the tears, the flashbacks, the Mary was crying, the speech, the crew. And then there's just the big battles, man. Whitebeard throwing down with everyone. I am Whitebeard, Shirohige. Ace versus Blackbeard. Kizaru bodying the supernovas. Like, yo, man, it's too big of a pool. It's too big of a pool because there's so many different things you pick from. Then Luffy versus Crocodile, obvious reasons. Luffy versus Arlong for just the representation of what that meant, especially that time in the story for freedom and for Nami. And it's just, man, amazing stuff, right? Zoro, bro, the first Zoro versus Mihawk fight, and I know it was like one-sided, but that's what made it so amazing. That's what made it like just open your eyes to the entire world of One Piece. Super goated. Zoro versus Killer in the anime was legendary. That Zoro and Kamozo fight just, my goodness. In Wano, we keep forgetting the Wano fights, dude. It's all super good, but it's just, man. And Sanji in page 1, Sanji and Jabuda. Greatness. See, a lot of stuff to pick from there, man. But if I had to put it on a 3, it'd probably be Luffy versus Lucci, Luffy versus Katakuri, and Luffy versus Usopp. Because Luffy versus Usopp, just, there's no other fight like it that I've ever seen. No other fight like it. It is in a league of its own when it comes to what it makes me feel emotionally. Luffy versus Lucci is, like I said, the climactic boss battle. That is the boss battle. When I think about my favorite boss battles in anime and manga, and like the fight, the one that I compare everything to, I compare every single fight ever since I watched Luffy versus Lucci. And it ended at episode 309. Ever since I've watched that fight, I compare everything to it. Everything. That's just, I hold that fight to such a high standard. And then Luffy versus Katakuri, because it's just the rivalry, the way they came to respect each other, what I mean to acknowledge and accept your true self with Katakuri, and just the Conqueror's Hockey Clash, it's all of it. It's all of it, right? Just super amazing stuff. But I love it. I absolutely love it. Just see, it's tough, man. You know what? I'm not even gonna try to order these. Not even gonna try. Those are my favorite fights in anime and manga. I don't even know how long this video is. At this point, it doesn't even matter. But those are my favorite fights in anime and manga. A lot of greatness in here, man. There's just so much stuff that culminates in these battles. Especially when it comes to two characters and everything riding on both of them accomplishing or succeeding this mission, or if it's like big battles, right? And like one character against many or against all odds, or a final battle of an arc, like that's been building up for a while, like Luffy versus Lucci, Naruto versus Pain, or Ichigo versus Byakuya, all that stuff, Gohan and Cell, and rival fights like Kenshiro and Rao, and all that stuff, man. Like, just so many fights that are good for so many different reasons. And I feel like the battles are a part of what make anime and manga so much fun to watch. But it's what goes into those fights. What are the characters going through at that point in time that's going to stop them from either achieving victory in this fight, or what's going to cause them to achieve victory? What are they currently going through internally? What is something that's going to happen in this battle that's going to propel their characters forward? How is that going to be represented through the visuals and stuff, if it's anime or if it's manga? And it's just, anime and manga, because it's such a visual heavy medium, has so much potential to do so much with these battles. And that's why I love it so much. And just, man, it's some amazing fights. Just so many good fights. And those are the ones that popped in my head. I'm pretty sure later on I'm going to be like, sweet mother of flag nerds, I forgot one. But off the top of my head, those are the ones I've got. But yo, let me know what your favorite fights are down below. I'm not picky when it comes to anything. I don't care if you include filler, movies, whatever. If you want to put Broly versus everyone, I don't give a flying flag. Do whatever you want, because that is amazing. Yo, bro, you can do whatever you flag you want, dude. Whatever your top 10 is, or whatever your top 5 is, or whatever your favorite fight is, I look forward to hearing about that. Hopefully in the future I'll be able to do like an actual top 10, give you like a rank list or whatnot. But yeah, those are my favorite fights in anime and manga. Shout out to y'all for once again racking my brain to the point to where I feel like I'm losing my mind here, but this was Santa Hat level stuff I got to talk about again. So thank y'all for giving me the opportunity to talk about so much greatness. I'll see y'all next time. Please check out any of the series that we're talked about here. All really good stuff about it. I had to talk about all this greatness. Y'all have a good one. Stay blessed. Anime and manga greatness, man.